In the quiet town of Hawkins, Indiana, a group of kids discover a strange girl with mysterious powers while searching for their missing friend, Will. As they unravel the terrifying secrets of a parallel dimension, they realize that their small town is ground zero for unimaginable horrors. Welcome back to your daily dose of Movie Pill. We're recapping a 2016 dark fantasy supernatural horror season 1 and 2 of the series titled Stranger Things. Spoilers ahead, and let's dive right in. We're taking a trip back to the 1980s in the small town of Hawkins, Indiana. The main characters are a group of kids, lovable nerds who spend their time playing Dungeons and Dragons and fighting a monster they call the Demogorgon. One night, on his way home, Will Byers encounters a strange creature which follows him home, and soon after, he goes missing. Will's mother, Joyce Byers, played by Winona Ryder, and his older brother, Jonathan, quickly realize that Will is gone. Chief Hopper, the local cop, isn't used to serious cases, so when Joyce reports her missing son, he dismisses it, thinking Will just ran away or something. Will's friends, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas, start searching for him, but instead stumble upon a mysterious girl with a shaved head. She introduces herself as 11. It turns out she escaped from Hawking's lab, where they were conducting experiments on her due to her psychic abilities. Mike takes her in and gives her Eggo waffles, which she grows to love. As they spend time together, 11 reveals that dangerous men from the lab are after her, and she knows where Will is. He's trapped in a parallel dimension called the Upside Down, home to the monster they call the Demogorgon. Could they have used a more funny name for a scary entity? Mike's older sister, Nancy, is caught in a love triangle between Jonathan and the cool kid, Steve. She goes to Steve's house for a party, leaving her friend Barb alone outside. While Barb is moping, the lights flicker and she disappears, dragged into the Upside Down by the Demogorgon. Meanwhile, Joyce starts receiving strange phone calls where she can faintly hear Will. She believes he's trying to communicate with her through flickering lights, so she covers the house in Christmas lights, figuring out a way to communicate by painting the alphabet on the wall, with each letter corresponding to a light. This helps her talk to Will, but only in yes or no questions. However, the Demogorgon also starts trying to break through the walls. Chief Hopper's investigation leads him to Hawkins' lab, which is supposed to be an electrical plant, but he quickly realizes it's a CIA cover-up run by Dr. Brenner, who has a history of kidnapping kids for experiments. 11, who was raised in the lab, knows Brenner as Papa. Hopper suspects that the lab might have kidnapped Will, but before he can dig deeper, Will's body is found in a quarry, seemingly a tragic but normal death. However, Hopper isn't convinced and discovers that the body is a fake. He breaks into the lab, but finds only a drawing by 11. Joyce and Hopper then track down 11's mother, who had accused Brenner of kidnapping her child. Unfortunately, she's mentally unstable, and her sister explains that she was part of the MK Ultra program, a CIA experiment involving LSD to test psychic abilities. Although it didn't work on her, she was pregnant at the time and gave birth to a psychic daughter, who was kidnapped and raised as 11. I don't think that using LSD while pregnant would make your kid's psychic. I think that the CIA wanted something far more dire to happen. Jonathan and Nancy, while searching for Will, find a photograph of Barb right before she went missing. They realize there's a monster involved and gather the supplies to hunt it down. Nancy discovers a tunnel that leads to the Upside Down and barely escapes from the Demogorgon. 11 uses her powers to communicate with Will through a radio, and the kids sneak her into school to use a stronger signal, but it doesn't go as planned. At school, Mike gets into a fight with bullies and 11 steps in, freezing one in place and making him pee his pants. Later, these bullies corner Mike again and try to make him jump into the quarry, but 11 saves him by levitating him to safety and breaking the bully's arm. As they head home, surveillance vans spot 11, and the lab agents begin hunting them. The kids flee on their bikes, and 11 uses her powers to flip a van blocking their path, clearing the way. Eventually, all the groups come together, and they share what they've learned. It turns out that the lab was using 11's psychic abilities to spy on the Russians, but during one of these experiments, she encountered the Demogorgon and accidentally opened a portal to the Upside Down. She believes that by building a sensory deprivation tank, she can physically locate Will. Amazingly, it works. She sees Will and confirms that he's still alive. With this knowledge, Hopper and Joyce head to Hawkins' lab to make a deal, saying, "Look, we won't cause you any troubles. Just let us into the Upside Down so we can rescue our kid." Meanwhile, back at home, Nancy and Jonathan are worried about the Demogorgon, which might still be around. They realize that the creature is attracted to blood, much like a shark, so they decide to cut themselves to lure it in. Just as they're preparing for this, Steve arrives, confused by the strange scene unfolding before him. He quickly catches up, just in time, as the Demogorgon begins emerging from the ceiling. Despite their efforts, they discover that bullets are useless against it. But Steve's nail-covered baseball bat proves to be a different story. With a well-aimed swing, they manage to injure the creature, trapping it and setting it on fire. Although it's hurt, it manages to escape back into the Upside Down. In the Upside Down, Hopper and Joyce eventually find Will, who's trapped in a cocoon-like structure. They quickly perform CPR, and to their immense relief, Will is revived and is going to be okay. Unfortunately, the news isn't as good for Barb. She's found dead, a victim of the Demogorgon. Back at the middle school, the agents from Hawkins' lab, led by Papa, finally catch up with the kids. Eleven, refusing to go back with them, uses her psychic powers to kill the agents by making their brains explode. However, the strain of using her abilities causes her to pass out, leaving her and the others vulnerable to capture. But just when all seems lost, the blood from the struggle attracts the Demogorgon. Are the Demogorgon just land sharks? They seem to share some resemblance. The creature attacks, taking out Papa and causing chaos. The kids try to fight back with their slingshot, but it's not working. Lucas makes one final attempt, but his shot misses the mark, until they realize that it was actually Eleven who saved them with her powers. In a final heroic act, she says goodbye to her friends and uses her powers to tear the Demogorgon apart, disappearing in the process. Will is rescued, and while it seems like a happy ending, there are still unresolved issues. Eleven is missing, Barb is gone, and Will is experiencing disturbing flashbacks to the Upside Down. In a particularly unsettling moment, Will coughs up a small slug-like creature, a baby Demogorgon, but decides to ignore it, setting up the tension for Season 2. As Season 2 begins, we return to Hawkins, Indiana, still firmly set in the 1980s. The boys are now hanging out at the local arcade, facing a major crisis. Someone named Mad Max has beaten Dustin's high score in Dig Dug. However, Will's problems are far more serious. He's plagued by vivid flashbacks to his time in the Upside Down. Concerned, his mom takes him to Hawkins' lab, where a new, seemingly friendly doctor is now in charge. He assures them that the days of evil experiments are over, but the lab is still a shady government operation, and the portal to the Upside Down remains open in the basement, albeit contained for now. So, the days of experiments are not over. Is that what he's trying to say? A new girl, Maxine, who goes by Mad Max, arrives at school. She's a whiz at Dig Dug, and naturally all the boys are smitten with her. Meanwhile, Joyce, Will's mom, has started dating Bob, a sweet but nerdy guy who genuinely cares for her. Jonathan and Nancy, still close friends, clearly have feelings for each other. But Nancy is still officially dating Steve, the school's cool kid. Nancy and Jonathan meet with Barb's parents for dinner. They're still grieving and have no answers about their daughter's mysterious disappearances. We know Barb was eaten by the Demogorgon, but her parents are unaware and have hired a private investigator to look into it. This investigator has been pestering Chief Hopper with wild theories, including Russian conspiracies and alien invasions. He's on the brink of uncovering the truth, but he hasn't quite connected all the dots yet. After the events of last season, where Eleven defeated the Demogorgon, she mysteriously disappeared. It turns out she's been living with Chief Hopper in secret. After she killed the Demogorgon, Eleven was briefly trapped in the Upside Down, but quickly found a portal to escape back to our world. Unable to return to Mike's house due to the heavy surveillance, she survived alone in the woods for a while. Hopper, who had been leaving food for her, eventually took her in and hid her away in a remote cabin to protect her from the government agents, who were still searching for her. Tell me, in what universe would a cabin stop the US government from finding her? Now it's Halloween, and Eleven desperately wants to go trick-or-treating like a normal kid. But Hopper, fearing for her safety, insists that she stays hidden indoors. The boys dress up as the Ghostbusters, excited for a night of fun, but they're disappointed to find out that no one else is wearing costume. During their trick-or-treating, Dustin and Lucas try to charm Max and invite her to join them. Max's older brother, Billy, is the epitome of an 80s bad boy. Good-looking, but dangerously aggressive. He nearly runs the boys off the road in a fit of anger, and quickly dethrones Steve as the school's coolest kid, leading to a rivalry that starts with mild tension and escalates into something much more intense. At a Halloween party, Nancy, still burdened by the guilt over Barb's death, drinks heavily and ends up breaking up with Steve in a moment of drunken honesty. Meanwhile, Dustin discovers a strange tadpole-like creature in his trash can. He decides to keep it as a pet, naming it Dartignan, or Dart for short, and feeds it pieces of his Three Musketeers bar. When he shows it to the others, Will has a terrible realization. The creature resembles the baby Demogorgon slug he coughed up at the end of Season 1. As Dart quickly evolves, Mike tries to destroy it, but it escapes, and Dustin, determined to protect his new pet, hides the truth from the group. Well, the dumbest character award goes to Now let's wait. Maybe someone will one-up him later. Will's connection to the Upside Down deepens when he has another terrifying encounter with the Shadow Monster. In an attempt to face his fears, he stands his ground, but the creature invades his body, leaving him writhing in pain as it takes control. Once the ordeal is over, Will appears to be himself, but it's clear something has changed. He's colder, more distant, and unnervingly calm, showing signs that he might be partially possessed by the Shadow Monster. Will struggles to articulate what's happening to him, but his talent for drawing becomes a crucial tool. He begins creating strange, seemingly random scribbles, which Joyce eventually pieces together like a puzzle. When they lay out the drawings, they form a map of the tunnel spreading beneath Hawkins, indicating that the Upside Down is starting to take over the town. Hopper, realizing the implications, goes to investigate and discovers the town's pumpkin patches are dying, a sign that the Upside Down is spreading its influence above ground. He starts digging and finds himself trapped in the very tunnels Will's drawings depicted. Meanwhile, Will, still under the influence of the Shadow Monster, cryptically tells the others that Hopper is in danger, though it's unclear where exactly he is. As they scramble to locate Hopper, Bob, Joyce's boyfriend, arrives, unwittingly offering his help. Although he's unaware of the full extent of what's happening, Bob's love for puzzles and brain teasers proves invaluable. He figures out the location of Hopper's predicament by connecting the dots on Will's maps. They manage to rescue Hopper just in time, but as they burn the tunnels to stop the spread of the Upside Down, Will experiences violent seizures, indicating that he's more connected to the Shadow Monster than anyone realized. Well, that's fine and all, but we should just stop this spreading and hope for the best, no? Meanwhile, Eleven, now desperate for answers about her past, digs through Hopper's files and discovers information about her mother. Determined to learn the truth, she hitchhikes to her mother's house and proves her identity to her aunt. There, she finally meets her mother, but as she tries to communicate with her psychically, she realizes that her mother is mentally trapped in a loop, reliving the trauma of losing Eleven. Through this psychic connection, Eleven learns the heartbreaking story of how Dr. Brenner, the sinister figure from Hawking's lab, took her away at birth, told her mother that she had miscarried, and then subjected her mother to brutal electroshock therapy when she tried to rescue her, leaving her in a permanent state of mental disarray. Back in Hawkins, Nancy, struggling with guilt over Barb's death and her recent breakup with Steve, teams up with Jonathan to bring justice for Barb. They decide to expose Hawkins' labs, believing that the truth needs to be revealed. They meet with the private investigator who'd been looking into Barb's disappearance and share everything they know. Realizing the gravity of their story, the investigator advises them to tone it down so the public can digest it. They agree to water down the details, focusing on a gas leak cover story to explain Barb's death, while omitting the more outlandish elements, like the alternate dimension and the Demogorgon. The media and their false stories. Does the media ever tell the truth anymore? Meanwhile, Dustin's secret about Dart becomes impossible to hide. Dart has grown significantly and now unmistakably is a baby Demogorgon. After it escapes and kills Dustin's cat, he realizes he needs help. He turns to Steve, who, despite his recent breakup, steps up to help Dustin. The two form an unlikely but effective team, setting out to track down and kill Dart before it can fully mature into a more dangerous creature. Their partnership, though unexpected, brings some much-needed comic relief to the tense and increasingly dire situation in Hawkins. And so, the stage is set for the epic confrontations and revelations that are sure to come, as the forces of the Upside Down continue to encroach upon the town, threatening to consume everything and everyone in their path. Steve gives Dustin some advice on girls and reveals the secret to his cool hair. Use mousse when it's damp, not wet. Meanwhile, Lucas is dealing with Max, who's frustrated that she's part of the group but excluded from all the secret conversation. Lucas catches her up on everything about the Demogorgon and the Upside Down, but Max is skeptical and doesn't believe him. When Dustin finally responds on his walkie-talkie, he invites Lucas and Max to join him in hunting the Demogorgon. Lucas grabs Max, determined to prove it to her. As they set up a trap for the Demogorgon, they quickly realize that Steve is in trouble. There's more than one Demodog, and they're surrounding him. Steve manages to bash one of the Demodogs and runs back to the bus, where Max finally gets a close-up look at the creature. Just as they're about to be overrun and eaten, the Demodogs mysteriously retreat. Maybe they don't like to be looked at, or they're just shy. Either way, it works for our group. Meanwhile, back at Hawkins' lab, the team realizes that the portal they thought was contained isn't contained at all. It's been spreading underground, creating a network of tunnels. They decide they need to burn everything to stop it, but the doctor warns them that this could kill Will, who's connected to the vines. Mike suggests that since Will is connected to the Shadow Monster, they could use that connection to figure out how to defeat it. Will identifies the location of the Mother Brain, so they send troops to that spot, but when they arrive, they find nothing. Suddenly, they realize that the Shadow Monster has been controlling Will, not the other way around. Will has unwittingly led them into a trap, and the demo dogs are now coming for them. As this plays out, Eleven embarks on her own adventure. She uses her psychic powers to trace her mother's memories and discovers another girl who was with her in the lab. Eleven tracks her down to Chicago, where she meets a gang of punk characters led by a girl known as Number 8. They bond as sisters, and Number 8 teaches Eleven that her powers can be used for more than just physical feats. She can create mental illusions too. Number 8 pushes Eleven to test her powers, urging her to embrace the dark side. They've been hunting down and killing those involved in the Hawkins lab experiments, and when Eleven sees the man who hurt her mother, she agrees to join them in seeking revenge. With a new dark look, Eleven helps the gang rob stores and enjoy as many egos as she wants. They track down the man who hurt her mother, and just as they're about to kill them, he reveals that Dr. Brenner is still alive. Eleven doesn't believe him, but as she's about to kill him, she chooses mercy instead. She later uses her powers to check in on her friends and sees that they're in serious trouble. Thanking Number 8 for the makeover, she decides to leave the gang and return to Hawkins, leaving her new sister to continue her cycle of hatred and revenge. Back at the lab, the demo dogs are attacking, and things are spiraling out of control. The glass barrier that was supposed to keep the monsters out is failing. Will, still connected to the shadow monster, is compromised, so they sedate him and try to escape. But with the power out, they're trapped in the security room. Unfortunately, it's the 80s, and no one knows how to use computers except for Bob, the big nerd. Bob volunteers to go down to the control room, flipping the power back on and opening the doors with his computer skills. The gang makes it out, but Bob gets blocked by a demo dog. He hides in a closet, but when he tries to make a run for it, he accidentally knocks over a broom. The noise alerts the demo dogs, and despite a brief, romantic moment with Joyce, Bob is tackled by a demo dog and killed as the rest of the pack descends on him. Poor Bob. The whole gang regroups at Will's house, where they consult their Dungeons & Dragons manual for answers. They learn that the Mind Flayer, like the Shadow Monster, controls the minds of its minions, meaning if they kill it, all the demo dogs should die too. But just as they figure this out, the phone rings with a distinctive ringtone, and Will realizes that the demo dogs know he's at his house. The gang prepares for battle, each choosing their weapon of choice. Some weapons seem more effective than others, but when a demo dog bursts in, they find it already dead. They soon discover that Eleven has returned, sporting her new Darkseid outfit and looking fierce. She and Mike reunite, with Mike admiring her new look. Eleven meets Max, the newest member of the group, and Max warns her to stay away from her man. The gang fills Eleven in on the situation, and she realizes that she might have the power to close the gate. But they face a dilemma. If they close the portal while Will is still possessed, it could kill him. Determined to save him, they decide it's time for an exorcism. They take Will to Hopper's cabin, knowing the Mind Flayer prefers the cold, and turn up the heat. They blast Will with everything they've got, and the exorcism works. The shadow monster leaves Will's body, dissipating into the night air. Finally, they freed Will. Let me tell you, I was actually worried for him. With Will safe, Hopper and Eleven head to the lab to close the portal, leaving Steve to babysit the kids. But they're interrupted when Max's brother, Billy, shows up. After getting roughed up by his abusive father, Billy searches for Max, starting at Mike's house, where he has a flirtatious encounter with Mrs. Wheeler. Eventually, he arrives at Will's house, where he confronts Steve in a fight that's charged with tension. Billy proves to be stronger and more skilled, and he beats Steve up. But Max, spotting the tranquilizer they used on Will, stabs her brother with it, knocking him out. She warns him that he better start being nice to her or she'll start using the nail bat on him next time. Taking her brother's car, Max earns her nickname, Mad Max. The group, including an unconscious Steve, heads out to carry out their plan. When Steve wakes up, he reluctantly agrees to the suicide mission. As Hopper and Eleven try to reach the portal, they're blocked by demo dogs. Steve throws a lighter, setting the place on fire and drawing the demo dogs away. The boys run for their lives, but they're blocked by Dart, the demogorgon they raised. Dustin offers Dart a Three Musketeers bar, and Dart lets them past, but the rest of the pack shows up, ready to attack. Just when it seems they're doomed, the demo dogs run right past them, heading straight for Eleven. She's made it to the portal and is using her powers to close it. The Mind Flayer himself tries to stop her, but she's too strong, and with both hands raised, she closes the gate. As predicted, all the demo dogs die, and the day is saved. In the aftermath, Hawkins' lab is shut down after an expose is published, finally bringing justice for Barb. The gang gets ready for the middle school dance, where Dustin, following Steve's hair advice, hopes to impress the girls. Unfortunately, Steve is heartbroken because he and Nancy have broken up, and she's now with Jonathan. Dustin enters the dance with confidence, but Mad Max chooses Lucas, and the two are now a couple. Dustin, undeterred, tries to ask the hottest girl in the school to dance, but is turned down. Even Will manages to find a girl to dance with, leaving Mike sad and alone. But then, to his surprise, Eleven shows up. The kind doctor who survived everything decided to give her a birth certificate so she could live a normal life. Eleven and Mike share a dance and their first kiss, making the world seem right again. But as they celebrate, the Mind Flayer looms ominously in the Upside Down, plotting its revenge. Stranger Things Seasons 1 and 2 offer a nostalgic dive into the supernatural with its mix of 80s charm and eerie suspense, leaving us to wonder if our own world might have an upside down lurking just beneath the surface. It's a thrilling roller coaster of childhood adventures and otherworldly horrors. And if the thought of dancing with monsters doesn't sound appealing, remember, at least the kids get to go to school without worrying about being chased by interdimensional creatures. Most of the time. I rate these two seasons an 8.7 out of 10. What do you think? Looks like this movie pill is starting to wear off. But don't worry, there's always more where that came from. Tap here to keep the effects going with this next movie, because who can stop at just one? And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe, because your next movie dose is just a click away.